We're going to talk about what we call in the golf industry connecting with her, which is a relatively new strategic initiative, as Kevin said, designed to substantially grow women's participation and retention in the sport. And in terms of what we'll cover, I first want to talk a little bit about the opportunity that exists for all of us in the industry, talk about the power of the women's demographic, then we'll get into gender differences, and then some thought starters on tactical implementation that you could consider at the facility level. So from an opportunity standpoint, currently in the United States, there are 4.9 million women golfers, which is about 19%. So currently, the National Golf Foundation cites 25.7 million golf consumers in the United States. These are individuals that are playing an 18-hole round, at least one round annually. If we look at this 19%, in reality, the percentage of women that are playing actively or regularly on a consistent basis, it's more single digit, it's more about 6%. But regardless of the 6 or 19%, there's huge opportunity for growth. About 18 months ago, the PGA of America and the golf industry commissioned the Boston Consulting Group to do a 360-degree look at the golf industry. What is the state of the game? Where is the game headed? What do industry professionals, employers, consumers think about the sport? And one of the biggest things that fell out of that survey is that there's 90 million people in America interested in participating in our sport or returning to our sport. They've left the game for some reason. And a significant percentage of those 90 million are women, particularly 38 million women. So that's a huge opportunity for all of us. I will say candidly that 38 million figure has been debated a little bit. People see it and it's very astounding, it's staggering, it raises some eyebrows, and people say, well, is that really the figure? And so there's been some debate about that number. But even if that figure was less, or it was 50% less, we still believe the opportunity is substantial, and it wouldn't change our approach to going after this latent demand for the game, particularly in the women's space. So the Boston Consulting Group findings drove the industry's Golf 2.0 strategic plan. And one of the specific initiatives within it is connecting with her. And that's broken into 4 key areas of focus. The first is education and training. So we're putting a significant amount of horsepower behind educating industry professionals on how to transform the customer service model at their facilities to make it more welcoming and friendly, particularly to women, and respond to a woman's value set. Our second key area of focus is around alliance relationships. So we're working very closely with all the allied associations in the industry, such as the PGA Tour, the LPGA, the National Golf Course Owners Association, the Executive Women's Golf Association, and we could go so on down the line and share with you how we're all collaborating to grow participation in the game. We know that the rising tide in golf is going to raise all of our respective boats. Also, a big key area of focus is marketing and communication. So if there's 38 million women out there, or some multi-million number of women who are interested in our sport, how do we get golf on their radar? How do we get it in their consideration set? As an industry, we do a very good job, what I call talking to ourselves. We talk in golf circles about golf. It's almost like a secret society. And we broadcast our message on Golf Channel and Golf Week and Golf Digest, Golf World. We're in golf circles talking about our great sport. But with the strategic initiative Connecting with Her, we're trying to get outside of the golf circles and talk to women who are active, healthy-minded, are looking for ways to spend their discretionary dollar, get on their radar about this great sport, and discuss with them how we can fit it into their busy lifestyles. And then finally, events and programming. And that's really rooted in primarily in Get Golf Ready, which is the industry's signature program. And it's a great on-ramp for individuals, particularly women, to come into the game. So we're doing a lot with Get Golf Ready from an outreach standpoint, particularly to corporations. They've identified with Get Golf Ready as the great or perfect employee talent development tool because it responds to health and wellness. team building, leadership development, business building. So we've had a great response from corporations to implement Get Golf Ready. But it's really about engaging women on their terms. We like to think of it as her game, her way. It doesn't have to be the traditional 18-hole experience that may take 4 or 5 hours. How can we as an industry think about repackaging the product to make it respond to her value set? So moving into the demographics, our world is changing. Many women now are delaying marriage. They're getting better jobs. They're making more money. They're holding the majority of undergraduate degrees, an increasing majority of graduate degrees that are granted. In every major city in the US, single women in their 20s are out earning their male counterparts. So it's a very, very different dynamic. Women are a significant contributor to dual income households. And think about your personal relationships in your own households. Oftentimes the woman is that chief purchasing officer for the household, not only in the traditional categories such as grocery or healthcare, but in other categories that we typically haven't thought of the woman as the decision maker: financial services, home improvement. Again, talking about young single women, they're buying homes at an astounding rate, purchasing at a quicker and faster rate than men. And when they buy a home, they're buying everything that comes with it, from the home improvement and the decor to the landscape service. So they're really that driver. This has impacted every industry, though. If we look at that 80% in the healthcare category on the screen, with what's happening with Obamacare, all of the healthcare companies have recognized that in the next 12 months, women are going to be making a healthcare purchase decision for their family. It's not going to be driven necessarily by the employer anymore. So what can those healthcare companies do to get in front of that woman and resonate with her and connect with her? So when she has to make that decision, she's going to look at that company in a favorable light. But it's really transcended all industries. The golf industry is not alone. I think about recently on the cover of Bloomberg Business Week, there was a picture of a Lego toy, and I think you're probably all familiar with Lego. They built a very, very successful business catering to only 50% of the world's population from a toy standpoint. They built their business on the boy, and they realized they could no longer sustain their business model by ignoring the other 50%. So they came out with a Lego for Girls line, and it's really resonated. But that's happening in every single industry. So as a golf industry, we can kind of take comfort in that we're not alone. Everybody is heading down this path and trying to crack that code on how do they connect with the woman purchasing officer. One segment in particular that I like to talk about, because it's often neglected or overlooked from a stereotype standpoint, is what's been referred to as primetime women. This is the very prosperous segment. Typically, these are women who are in their 50s or 60s. They're spending 2.5 times more than younger women. Oftentimes, their children are out of the household. They have more discretionary income to spend. They're holding senior positions at their places of employment, possibly owning their own business as well. From the prior slide, you saw that 70% of women, 70% of the new businesses, small businesses started, are being started by women. So this is a very prosperous segment, again, that's often overlooked, and I think is a real sweet spot for the golf industry when we think about new prospective customers. So overall, the power of the women's market, domestically in this country alone, women represent $5 trillion in economic spending. And we know that women are the key to growing what has been a flat, or in some cases an industry that's been down. They're the key to the next generation. The next generation. There's a multiplier effect when a woman is making a purchase decision. If she has a good experience, she's going to tell her friends. She's going to tell her colleagues. She's often purchasing for her family. She may be purchasing for her parents, her children, her siblings. She often is purchasing for friends, purchasing for her business. So a single woman represents a substantial multiplier effect when you're interfacing with her at your facility. So we want to keep that in mind. So what are the keys to success? When we talk about the women's market, we can almost view dealing with women as going to a foreign country. If we were going to a foreign country and we were going to set up a new business, what would we want to do? First, we would want to learn the language. We would want to learn the culture, the societal norms, and make sure that we positioned ourselves for success. And it's similar to the women's market. So we liken it to putting on a gender lens and putting yourself in a position to see things at the golf facility level through a different lens, through a woman's lens. Her values are different. Her cultural norms are different. The way she approaches a purchase decision is different. The way her brain operates is very different. And there is no such thing as a unisex brain. The brain is really biologically and chemically different between a male and a female. Many of you have probably heard about the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. It really is true. This is a Mars versus Venus scenario. And it doesn't mean that one way is right and one way is wrong. It is what it is. We're just different. For example, without getting too much into science and biology, the limbic system, for example, in a woman's brain is much larger than the limbic system in a male brain. And that limbic system is the center of emotion. So women's decisions are often deeply rooted in emotion. And when she comes to your golf facility and she has an experience, be it a great experience or maybe a poor experience, she's going to remember how she felt at that facility. Not necessarily the particulars of everything, but she's going to remember the feeling and the emotional connection, how she felt that day on the golf course or maybe with an interaction with one of your staff members. So I want to use this little illustration here. Let's think about what happens at the mall. If you needed to go and purchase a pair of jeans, and I'm going to talk in generalities here because there's always exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, a man would pull up to the mall, he would march into the Gap, he would find that pair of jeans and probably hightail it out of the mall. Many women would go into the mall and they would meander in and out of many stores, looking at many other things besides looking for a pair of jeans before they finally arrive at the Gap and maybe or maybe don't buy that pair of jeans. But it's a whole different experience. She's there for the experience. She's there for me time. It's to get away. I've even had some people joke about this slide, and the guys will say, well, if there was an exterior door to the Gap and I could pull right up outside, I'd park there. I wouldn't even go in through the mall entrance. So I think you can probably relate to that. But again, think about the relationships in your lives and the women in your lives, mothers, daughters, spouses, etc., and just differences, how you approach things. And it'll shed a new light or a new gender lens on how you might go about approaching your business at the facility level. From a communication standpoint, we are different. And again, it's rooted in biology and in the chemical setup of the brain. And you can look down this list side by side and see. Again, these are generalities, but a lot of times most of this holds true. Men live in a world of status, and women often live more in a world of connections. And they communicate for closeness, and they want to make connections. Men will seek to win and avoid failure. Women are seeking more of a community and a non-isolation experience. Men are seeking answers, and women are seeking an understanding. One analogy that I'll use is when the NBA launched the WNBA. The WNBA went about selling tickets to prospective customers in the same way they took an approach with the NBA. They thought we've got this ticket model figured out, we're going to do it the same way. It failed miserably out of the gate. The telesales people could not pick up the phone and say, hey, Kathy, I've got 2 seats in the front row for the game tomorrow night. So-and-so is playing so-and-so. Are you in? That didn't work at all. You might be able to do that with a male customer. Call them up. You got 2 tickets, front row. Great, sign me up. But the woman, the sales process is very different. She wants to know the details. When is the game? Is it going to fit my calendar? Who am I going to be sitting with? That type of thing. What's the experience going to be like? It's not so much about 2 tickets in the front row for the big game. Another example of some of these analogies up here is when my husband and I started dating, we lived about an hour apart, and he had a 5-minute rule when we would talk on the phone. We'd only see each other on the weekends, but we would talk, and he would want to have a phone conversation about, very quickly, how was your day? When are we getting together on the weekend? Just give me the facts, and then we're hanging up. Whereas I wanted to have these long conversations, and I wanted to get close, and I'd hang up the phone, kind of woe is me. Oh, we only talked for 2 minutes, and it wasn't a good conversation, and that whole thing. He was just, give me the facts, and I wanted to have these long, connecting conversations. But, it's just different. We're just different from a communication standpoint. So when we think about the golf facility, and your staff thinks about the golf facility, women, again, are about relationships. It's important for your staff to appeal to her emotional need. That's going to go a lot further than a hard sell on a particular product. You're trying to sell her some irons, and you're talking about the specs, and you can adjust this club head, and here's what it's going to do. You've got to connect with her on a personal level first. Once you've made a personal connection with her, the rest of the sell of your products and services is going to happen a lot more easily. I've been playing golf about 17 years now. When I took the job at the PGA of America, I didn't play, but I was like, oh gosh, I better learn, got to figure this out. It's going to be important to my career. And while I've been playing for 17 years, I don't play regularly. I play in spits and spurts based on the business opportunities that present itself, and I know I need to play more. So recently, or last month, my husband got me a new set of irons for my birthday. I said, you know what, I'm gonna invest in a series of lessons, just get my game tuned up, try to take it to the next level. I've broken 100 once, but I haven't broken it since. So I go to my first lesson a week ago Tuesday, and I pull up, I park my car, and I'm at the trunk changing my shoes. And the professional pulls up very quickly in his golf cart, gets the clubs out of my trunk, puts them on the cart, and I knew what he was doing because I've been in the golf setting for 15 years, but I thought to myself, if I had been a beginner and he pulled up in the golf cart like that, taking my clubs out of the trunk, putting them in the cart, I'm getting in the cart, he's taking me somewhere, where is he taking me? I was just like, wow. And he didn't know me. He didn't know that I was experienced. He didn't know that I was from the PGA of America. It was very alarming to me, and I thought, I'm glad I'm not a beginner because it would have been very off-putting. And then as we were driving to the range, there was no chit-chat. There was no getting to know you, getting to know me. He immediately started asking about my clubs. He noticed I had gotten new irons, which was great. But he said, I noticed you have men's clubs. Why do you have men's clubs? And he was asking me a lot of particulars about the clubs, which actually got me a little bit rattled. And I was like, oh my gosh, well, maybe I bought the wrong stuff, and he's questioning my equipment already. But that's an illustration of, I think we're so comfortable in our world, and we're doing so many things a certain way, and we're on autopilot, that we forget to take a step back and put ourselves in her shoes, take some time to get to know her. That definitely goes a long way with the woman customer. From a value standpoint, women have, again, generalities, women have different values than men, and particularly when it comes to a golf experience. And these values that many women hold close directly translate into barriers that our golf industry has put up. They've become a barrier to women's participation in the game. And those values drive a woman's purchase decision. So she values time, she values social connections, she wants to learn, she really respects golf industry professionals, and she wants to know what you know. But she needs to connect with you first and then begin to learn. And without question, she values customer service. Think about the women in your lives and where they're shopping, whether it's the Apple Store or Starbucks or Nordstrom, or she's going to Target instead of Walmart. Why is she doing those things? What is it about those retailers that give her a customer service experience or a feeling that she's not getting at some other retailer? That is what's driving her to go to her particular point of retail. So when we look at our facilities, initially we like to encourage that you audit your golf facility. You look at the golf shop, the golf course, your signage, the food and beverage experience, all of the key areas that she would interface with if she came out by herself or with friends, colleagues, her family, and really audit those. You know, I think about the golf shop. When you walk into the typical golf shop, the first thing you see is the counter. Immediately there's a barrier. You walk in, most everybody, if not everybody, is behind the counter. And I'm not suggesting you got to tear down your counter, but you could if you want. Again, think about the Apple Store. You know, Vernon referenced it a lot, but there's no counter in the Apple Store. Everybody's out on the floor. They're interacting with the customers. They're right there. They're not hounding you, but they're there. They're approachable. They're meeting your needs. They have a handheld tablet or a device where they can take your payment. But there's not this barrier in the Apple Store. Another thing, just some small examples within the golf shop for a woman. You know, do you have a full-length mirror? If I go into the dressing room in the golf shop or anywhere for that matter, and there's no full-length mirror or there's a tiny mirror, and I've got to come out of the dressing room and find a hat mirror and stand on my tippy toes to see, okay, does this skirt look okay? Like, that doesn't work. A woman needs a full-length mirror. She's got to check herself out. She's got to bend over, make sure the golf outfit's going to work, and is the skirt too short, and is the top too low? So you got to be able to do all of that. Another small example would be, you know, we talk about the value of time. How can you help her put time back into her day? So she's at the golf course, but she's got this whole laundry list of things she's got to do. Could you offer a dry cleaning service at your facility once a week? While she's at the golf course, she's able to drop off or pick up her dry cleaning. You know, maybe you're working with a local dry cleaning vendor, or a member at your club has a dry cleaning facility. That puts minutes, valuable minutes, back into her day. Or you're offering a gift wrap service. She's bought a golf shirt in the shop for her husband, and she's got to go home and wrap it, but you're like, no, let me take care of it. I'll wrap that right here for you. So little things like that. I think there's a lot of changes that we can make at the facility level that don't have to be infrastructure changes or expensive changes or necessarily cost anything, but they're rooted in customer service, and they're rooted in caring and making a connection and putting time back in her day. From a golf course standpoint, you know, think about the tees that the majority of your female customers are playing. A lot of them are probably playing the forward tees. And what is that forward tee experience like? Could you go out with her one day and play the forward tees with her? You know, maybe you can't go play all 18 because there's a lot of demands on your time, but play a few of those holes with her, and she'll be like, wow, they took the time to see what my experience is like at the forward tees. And you might learn something by putting yourself in her shoes at those forward tees and say, you know what, there's a few adjustments we could make out here to make her experience more fun and make the golf course a little bit more playable for her. From a signage standpoint, look carefully at your signage. Again, we're in this inner circle of golf, and we know the lingo and we know the language. I had someone in a prior session this spring who, one of the consumers at the facility, it was a new woman, and she came to the course for her lesson. She checked in, and the individual at the shop said, okay, you're going to go meet your instructor on the green. So she goes outside, she comes back in, and the individual behind the counter was like, is everything okay? And he said, you're meeting on the green. She said, well, everything's green out there. So we make these assumptions that people know what the green is, or what a putter is, or you didn't change your shoes. Well, I didn't know I was supposed to change my shoes. There's a whole cultural norms around our game that are not familiar to non-golfers, male and female. And we need to help them with verbal communication, and our signage has to be black and white, plain as day, very clear for them to understand it and feel comfortable. Nobody wants to embarrass themselves when they go to a golf facility or anywhere. There's enough intimidation, so anything that you can do to break down some of those barriers, real and perceived, will endear you to new customers and more longevity with your customers. From an experience standpoint, you'll want to audit the experience at your facility. What's the experience like for a new customer? or a female customer. And this is something that shouldn't be all on one individual at a golf facility. Oftentimes I'll speak at a PGA section meeting, and I can see the PGA professionals in the room sometimes get a little bit overwhelmed, like, oh my goodness, how am I going to take this all on? It's something that the whole staff should participate in. Everybody should do his or her part. It's got to be a culture that everyone embraces. Like Vernon had showed in his presentation, you know, it's got to come from management, but everyone has to embrace it. It has to be a team effort. One illustration that I'll use that was given to me at the Wisconsin section meeting recently, one of the PJ professionals spoke about he has a no tolerance policy on for his staff at his facility. There can never, ever be any derogatory discussion about women in his facility. Whether or not customers are present, if he ever hears staff, you know, kibitzing about, oh, those women, they're playing slow, or they didn't like the merchandise I brought in, it was a no tolerance policy for any negative discussion that was gender specific. And that just really struck me, that the gentleman at the top would take that strong a position and that position of advocacy and really hammer home to his staff that this is an important customer, a customer that can grow our business, grow our bottom line, and we're not going to talk in any negative light about her. But it's important for your staff to be able to connect with your customers, and oftentimes I think maybe it's easier for a male professional in the shop to talk to a male member or a male guest about maybe last night's box score or what's happening in March Madness this weekend, and they're not sure what to speak to a woman about. You know, maybe you're asking her about her family or her hobbies or her business. What business is she in? So you've got to find those different points of connection where you can connect with your female customer. And lastly, from a customer service standpoint, another story that I'll tell, at the PJ Merchandise Show this past January, we brought in Bridget Brennan, who is the author of Why She Buys. It's a great book, and I would encourage you to take a look at it. But before Bridget came to the PJ Merchandise Show to speak, and Bridget is not a golfer, she decided that she wanted to go through Get Golf Ready, just to, you know, put her toe in the water, understand the game, bolster her speaking engagement at the show. So in the fall, Bridget began her phone call campaign to sign up for Get Golf Ready lessons, and this was a Monday. And she was 3 or 4 phone calls in before she realized, oh, okay, golf facilities are not open on Mondays. Now, how would Bridget know that? But immediately, she had a bad experience. She had wasted her time. She's a very busy executive woman, wasted her time. So she tried again on Thursday. She had much more success getting people on the phone, but it was amazing to her that the number of facilities that were offering Get Golf Ready, but the person who answered the phone was not aware of, was astounding. So these facilities are listed on a website, but the frontline communicator at the facility was not aware of what the professional out on the range was offering. So it's critical that your frontline staff is very, very knowledgeable about the amenities, services, programs, et cetera, that are offered at your facility. Because if she has a poor experience with that first phone call, that could be the deal breaker right there. So make sure that your frontline staff is really up to speed, really courteous, and that woman can tell that the frontline staff person is smiling at her through the phone. Vernon.
Right.
You'll also want to audit your programming. And that includes player development, the playing experiences, and the non-golf experiences. There's a lot of women that are keen, again, 38 million arguably, keen to getting to know more about golf, putting their toe in the water, exploring the golf experience. But their first time out, they may not necessarily want to pick up a golf club. So what types of things or programs or experiences can you offer at your golf facility that are non-golf experiences? Or maybe when she's dropping her children off for a junior program, you're offering her some other experience at the facility, golf or non-golf, that keeps her there for an hour while the kids are in their program and gets her more comfortable and more exposed to what's going on at the facility. In the recent Nebraska section meeting, one of the professionals shared that he holds a 5K race at his golf course every year. And it's grown to be this phenomenal event every year. Families come out and they're running around the golf course, I guess on and off the cart paths, I'm not really sure, he didn't explain, but there's a lot of non-traditional, non-golf programming that you could offer your customers that are familiarize the woman more with the golf facility, make her more comfortable, and make her feel more connected. Because oftentimes that annual dues payment or that monthly payment is crossing her desk at home, and she's looking at that bill saying, what is the family getting out of this? What am I getting out of this? So really think about how you can expose her to the golf facility in a more meaningful way. I want to talk for a minute about social media. This is really important to growing your business. Women are connected to their mobile devices all day long. That is the means by which they connect their personal life, what they're doing with their personal time, to connect with their family's life, how they're running the family schedule, and how they're running their business. So that is the main point of intersection on a daily basis. It's like an appendage. She's got that mobile device all day. She's running her 3 worlds on it. So what type of content can you put out there that can get you on her radar and in her consideration set, where she starts to think about your products and services and what you have to offer her and her family on a more regular basis? If you're not in the social media channels, that's a missed opportunity. This is a space that doesn't require any financial resources from an advertising outlay, but it does require human resources. You would need to identify an individual on your team, or maybe it's a shared effort, but someone who's going to populate those social channels on a regular basis. But you want to make it easy for her to see your content and also share your content with her friends, peers, business associates. She'll be your biggest asset and your biggest ambassador if you put the information in her hand and make it easily shareable. So wrapping up, I wanted to touch on 5 tactics that you could consider to implement at your facility. And these are just thought starters. You may resonate with some of them or all of them, or take them in a different direction. And I'll also leave you, when I'm done, a little cue card that has these 5 on them. So no need to jot them down. But the first one would be to make sure that the staff at your golf facility is educated on the power of the women's demographic. The fact that this is a real economic opportunity that can benefit your facility's bottom line and grow your business. We've got a Connecting with Her playbook, and the URL that it's available at will be on this little cue card that I give you. But utilize the playbook with your team at your facility. And again, take a divide and conquer approach and have everyone take ownership in trying to grow this demographic. And encourage an open dialogue about the subject matter. Oftentimes when we're talking about gender, it can be a little bit intimidating or a little bit uncomfortable. And then number 2, we think it's very effective, and we have some case studies in this regard, where golf facilities have invited in influential women from the facility and or influential women in the community to have a very casual, I'll call it a roundtable discussion. Maybe you're having the discussion at your club, or maybe you're doing it at the local Starbucks, but having an open dialogue with these influential women about, what are you hearing? What do you like about the club? What don't you like? What's the scuttlebutt? Endear yourself to that small group of women, invite them into the process, and have them help shape and mold what the future of your facility is going to be from a woman's standpoint. Because if you ask her opinions, she'll tell you. And it's not like you're going to have to implement everything she said. Well, she told me 14 things and I have to do all 14. That's not the case. But have an open dialogue, invite them into the process, and I think there'll be some good learnings out of it that you can implement at the facility level for your operations and your programming. Within the checkbook, and again, I'll give you the link to the digital interactive version that you can use with your teams, there's a comprehensive checklist in the back where you can audit the facility. Again, the operations, the experience, the programming. It'll help you audit all of that using a gender lens. And then think about, we talked about the value sets for a woman. Time, she wants to learn, she wants it to be social, she wants top-notch customer service. Think about a program that you could implement that could respond to those value sets. And maybe it is Get Golf Ready or a version of Get Golf Ready. It's, Get Golf Ready, for example, it's a series of 5 group lessons. It's $99 typically for that series. It's a 90-minute experience. She doesn't need equipment when she comes out. She can borrow equipment from the facility. It's very social in nature. She's going to be in a small group setting, probably 8 people. So something that responds to her value set. Put a product out there, an experience out there, and start with that. And then lastly, consider doing some outreach in your community. Even if when you get your facility ready, it's going to be that warm, welcoming, customer service, customer-centric environment that you've created. We've got to do outreach as an industry to these women. These 38 million women, they're not just going to show up at our doors. We have to reach out to them. So reach out through local professional membership associations, chambers of commerce, local businesses. We've had, again, great experience with corporations who are looking for meaningful talent development programming for their employees, and golf can be a perfect tool to that. But we've got to invite women in. Oftentimes I'll ask women, or even some of my friends, well, why don't you play? And they'll look at me a bit puzzled and they'll say, well, I don't know, nobody's ever invited me. It's that simple. She wants to be invited. So invite her in to the process. So on the screen, I've got the URL to access the Connecting with Her playbook, where there's a much deeper dive into this content, but I'll also give you that little take-home card that has on it as well. Please share your success stories with us. We really love to shine a spotlight on success stories within the industry. Again, that the rising tide is going to raise all of our boats collectively, and we like to share success stories whenever possible. So with that, do I have time to take a few questions, or are there any questions at this time? So the question was asked, what is the PGA of America and or the golf industry going to do to help overcome the barrier of women who are not inviting other women in at the club? So oftentimes it's the 9-holer or the 18-holer league participants that are the biggest barrier to making new women feel welcome at the club. There's that small group of women who've been there for years, or maybe they're very good or very competitive, and you can get that cliquey environment at a facility. There could be that group of mean girls, I'll call it. I get that question all the time. And it's a difficult question, and I don't want to represent that we have the secret sauce to answer that, but we think that it's rooted in communication. So someone on your team, I don't know if it's the PGA professional or someone of influence on your team that can kind of identify maybe the ringleader within that difficult group, kind of call that individual over and take her under your wing and say, we need to talk about this. And we have new women that are looking to come into the facility. We're trying to grow our business. And there's a perception that, and then you have to outline what you're observing or what the perception is. It's not easy, but I hear that question a lot. I believe it goes on at many, many clubs. And it does need to be addressed through open dialogue. And I think if there's a way for you during that discussion to get to the root causes of why did some of those past participants leave? What was it about the experience that she's no longer participating? Was it scheduling? Was it the environment when she got there? What was the emotional experience that she went through? So it's going to be important that you get to those root causes of what drove the decline, and how can you reinvent that product to bring her back into the fold and get her me time.